Hi everybody, welcome back to Pax Unplugged. We're doing another interview, and it is for the biggest game that we've interviewed on this show, I think. 10 years in the making, about to drop on Kickstarter. It is Crucible of Aether, and I have Jackie here from Living Metal Games, and they're going to kind of go over everything. And why don't you get us started with what we're talking about? What is Crucible of Aether?
Yeah, so hello. Crucible of Aether is this passion project that me and my team have been working on, as you mentioned, for over a decade. It is a Mystic Industrial TTRPG. So Mystic Industrial, think sort of Victorian fantasy meets like esoteric magic, with sort of a lot of just weird stuff happening. But it has one really big claim to fame that's kind of the driving force behind the game, which is that every action you perform, every faction you join, every vocation that you pursue, any of this stuff, it shifts and changes your character. So you say start off as some kind of, gallivanting sellsword, and you spend a campaign having to moonlight as a chef in some inn, and now all of a sudden you're really good at cooking, and that becomes an important part of your character throughout the story. Or you have some religious awakening, and all of a sudden you start doing kind of priestly magic, and that becomes your whole thing, and maybe you go through a whole circle, and it really changes stuff. Additionally, there are like every single faction in the game, from these sort of mechanized knights to secret orders of assassins, all are represented in the game through a series of skill trees that you can unlock by joining them. So you become this whole history of your adventures as you explore this kind of strange, weird, Victorian mystic world.
Really interesting was when I was reading just the premise, it made me think of fantasy, but not like any fantasy I'd ever seen. There aren't the typical elves and dwarves and all that. You have your own species, you have your own magic system, the way that it works into even things like machines. So why don't you explain how and why you decided to make something so completely different from everybody else?
So when I first started working on this game, and to this day still one of my favorite role-playing games of all time was Pathfinder. I absolutely love Pathfinder. I love high fantasy, I love epic fantasy, and I love all of that stuff. But admittedly, when it comes to writing stories, I believe that you always need to have something important to say with any of these things. And I'll admit, I didn't have anything new to say about elves and dwarves. People are doing a great job with that. People have done a great job for that for decades. So I wanted to create wholly unique characters. So I started taking inspiration from, a lot of these different sort of creatures and mixing them like animals and mixing them with people, and kind of how that would shift and change who they are. And I ended up sort of creating this world that was also not in your traditional sort of medieval fantasy, but moved it to a like industrial period. But on top of that, it's not just your classic like gas lamp sort of stories. It is a world that is so specifically influenced by the way that technology is brought into this world, that there's these huge technological disparities between where you go. So you might end up in a place that feels like Victorian England, but there's another part of the world that feels like it's like the Byzantine Empire. And this allows for just such beautiful visual contrast and such good thematic contrast in this world, that it sort of does something that I really wanted to show off compared to, say, your traditional epic fantasy with elves and dwarves.
One of the things that Crucible of Aether makes a claim of is that it really promotes, more than anyone else, player agency. How do you make that happen? How does that work as a system?
So it really comes down to the fact that your character, when they enter the world, due to our sort of robust character creation system, you're going to have a unique character, you're going to have a set of skills, you're going to have specific strengths and weaknesses, but you're never locked into them. So this is a game that, out of all of its 40 skills, there are skills from everything from doing from etiquette to sword fighting to crafting, and we want every single problem that you face for you to never be locked into a specific situation. So we don't have planned combats, we don't have planned social interactions. You as players just pick the skills on your list, roll from them, and watch them advance as you use them. So like I mentioned before we started going, is that you become this sort of history of all of your adventures. So, you start off as a thief, and all of a sudden you start finding yourself in a position where you are like I said before, moonlighting as a chef at an inn, and now all of a sudden you're really good at cooking. You pick up the violin, and now all of a sudden playing the violin is a major part of your character, and that starts shifting. So we want you to never feel locked in a particular class, a particular way of solving problems, and any of that. And we really promote that in our sort of one-shot adventure that we use as our sampler, The Incident on Ilgriff, which focuses on this sandbox design that allows players to really not just tackle problems in their own way, but find endings, find solutions, and find their place in the world in their own way.
So no classes.
No classes.
It's all built. Your main focus as a character then should be built around skills.
Yes.
Even more so than stats.
Yes.
Or so what is the give and take between stats and skills then?
So every single character, so I said there's 40 skills within Crucible of Aether, and 8 attributes. Very similar to sort of your traditional role-playing attributes with a couple extras in there. The skills are really sort of the main meat of your character, right? This is like how good you are at individual things, what that is. However, you do have attributes that will affect not just increasing the total number for each of these. Say, a more dexterous character is somebody who is better at lockpicking, so forth. But they also dictate how your character, how quickly your character ranks up these skills. So, a character who is stronger will be better at ranking up athletics and so forth. However, just like everything in the game, attributes are mutable. So as you are improving your character, you're improving your attributes. So you might have started off as a character that, say, isn't very dexterous, but you really just keep finding yourself lockpicking and sneaking. So when you get the opportunity, when you level up your character, you just start improving your dexterity. And now all of a sudden, that's the way you're going. You can just make these huge shifts.
Does that mutability of character make character development indecisive over time, do you think?
Far from it, far from it. See, I don't know if you've noticed this at your tables, but players tend to have sort of, a personality, a character in mind, things like this, or even just general ways that they interact with the world.
Yeah.
You have people that want to play the face character, you have people that want to play these sort of thieves and all of that stuff. And so the game, all it does is just go, okay, you made a character with a cool backstory that you thought was cool when you were making this character, and we're just going to keep nudging you until you're more and more comfortable in the way you want to play.
Which came first, the world or the system?
So I keep describing this, I am a obsessive simulationist. So to answer your question, it's both. I wanted everything to be mechanically represented in some way. I didn't want to create a world and then put a system on top of it, or a system and put a world on top of it. I wanted them to dance with each other constantly. So there isn't, like I said, there isn't really a mechanic in this game where I made like, say, a career and then said, oh, I'll fit them in the world somewhere because I wanted some kind of, quick fighter. Instead, I had an idea for a place and I said, okay, what kind of abilities would they have? I'll stat those out right now.
One of the things you said earlier, which was it's like steampunk without the steam. And when I was reading about it, one thing struck me very interesting was like the machines are even alive sometimes. So, I mean, from a DM's perspective, I said, oh, there's going to be a machine revolt one of these days. But like,
of course.
Have you considered how like living machines affects could they be played as a character, or do characters see the machines as being friend or foe, pets, wild animals? Like, how do you interact with something like that? It's just such a unique idea.
Yeah, so to give you a little bit of sort of the setting and kind of how everything goes there, basically, so the way that these living machines, how they integrate with society, is that a lot of the industrialized cities within this world are built on top of these labyrinths of living metal. So they're not necessarily humanoid in sort of your ways that you would see and that kind of stuff. But the way that they kind of most directly interact with people are through this kind of great tower called the Tower of Docteel. This huge living metal tower, when touched, transforms people player characters, you can play this, into these half-machine people called the Makers. Now, they are absolutely crucial to why this setting is the way it is, because they are blessed with these dreams in which they wake up with this flash of inspiration, this sudden urge, and they wish to sort of create something. They don't necessarily know what they're creating, but they kind of wake up and they go, oh, I need to take a gear, and I need to take this sprocket and put this here, and I made some kind of machine. Does anybody know what this does? And because of these sort of weird kind of jumps in the technological kind of in the tech tree, as it were, you have these kind of weird jumps in technology. But these machine people, where are they fit in society, are incredibly coveted. Because these people create such amazing inventions, the Empire keeps them under control in this sort of organization called the Ministry of Macrons.
Protected.
They're protected. Yeah, they're special citizens. They get to live in a very special place. But of course, as player characters, we also give opportunities for players to play, rogue versions of these. They go, I don't want to work for the Empire. I have a dream of a great invention. I don't trust an imperialist society with this stuff. Yeah. So you can kind of play as these kind of machines, is basically going through that.
Do you always have that connection back to the tower? Is that where your dreams are coming? Do you actually explain where the dreams come from, or do you leave that as an open interpretation for the DM?
We explain it just enough, which is that when you have these dreams, you see these visions of the machine goddess known as Makra, which is where their sort of name comes from. And Makra seems to want to control the robots and all of that stuff, but you can resist it. So the dream is what sort of connects you to the tower, what connects you to the machine goddess, but you can resist it. You can fight against it, and that can become a very important part of your character.
And as you fight against it, though, you never lose your connection. You're just always in a resistance.
Exactly. And that leaves us a lot of tension, a lot of being uncomfortable. There's actually a character within the lore, a character who's also one of these Macrons named Richard Barrett, who had a dream of a device called the God Reaper, which is a apocalyptic device. And of course, like any reasonable person says, I'm not going to start the apocalypse, and has become sort of the forerunner of Macron Iconoclast, being like, I'm going to teach you how to resist this. We're going to figure out ways to help other people resist this sort of the call of this terrible goddess. Because clearly, if she wants to make things that would kill so many,
right,
she can't be that good.
Yeah. Do you have a big, wide, robust pantheon, or is it a kind of a narrow?
So, the way that this is actually really exciting, because this is where the magic system in this world works. So, magic comes from belief. That is, so if enough people, believe in something, it ends up being real in sort of the metaphysical, called the Aether, which is sort of where the game's title comes from. So what this ends up meaning is that there's a bunch of religions in the game with their own sort of mythologies that contradict and all of that stuff. It's not kind of your traditional, just sort of polytheistic. There's a lot of different things, and the priests and sort of worshippers of a lot of these different religions are able to harness magics that associate with that faith, even if the religions don't exactly match up. So bringing this back to Makra is referred to as sort of machine goddess and all of this stuff, because when you wake up with some kind of robot lady that seems to have control over you, how else are you going to interpret that?
Right.
But because of sort of the kind of mystery of how religion works in this world, other major religions have been trying to sort of justify this character within their pantheon.
Cool.
Yeah.
The number of gods, though, is also, it sounds mutable based on the number of belief systems and cultures that are creating these belief systems.
Yes. And what's really cool about that is that, like, you have all these different kinds of religions. So, you have your kind of traditional polytheistic pantheons in one hand. Another one worships kind of this old hero god. And one of my favorites, which is called the Rat Queen's Calling. The Rat Queen is just a folk hero that ended up sort of saving the lives in a series of really important historical events that happened recently within the game, saving the life of a downtrodden people. And now they've taken this one woman who started off as just a freedom fighter and have elevated her to the point of literal goddess. because enough people sort of believe in her mythology that she now actually not just has powers herself, but grants powers to sort of her most devout followers.
You all know there's a chance you could become a god.
Yes.
Just so you know. And that's what I heard, at least.
And that's what I wanted you to hear.
Okay. Let's talk about the look of the work.
Sure.
It is really beautiful work. And earlier I had asked if you know who your staff was, and you said you had a staff artist that started everything.
Yes.
First, the work is just gorgeous.
Yeah, here's
I'll let you show you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so, you know, this is the art of Emily Megan, who is our sort of, also, I got my QR code here, but Emily Megan, who has been working with us for years, and really helping us bring this world to life. One of the things that we have is that, you know, we have very unique character designs in that there are no humans in this world, but there are, and all of the different peoples are sort of mixed with all of these animals, but we didn't want it to be sort of your traditional anthropomorphic animal. Not that I, you know, like, I love those kind of designs, but I wanted everyone to feel very unique. So she really helped us bring, like, you know, it's, let me see if I can find a good example here of some of the characters, but so let's see, I'm gonna go to the cultures here. I guess this just has the symbols, so we won't worry about that. But if you go to our character creation guide that you can find on our Discord server, you'll see, you know, these humanoid figures with talons, with feathers, with claws, with fangs, while still feeling kind of oddly human all at the same time.
Would you say that your god system and or magic system is the pride of the setting of the world? Or do you think that, or is there really one thing you think is like, this is the pillar of this?
So I think one of the, I guess, pillar of the world is really just that, just the fact that, you know, instead of it being a world, a steampunk industrial world, it is a world where in order for factories or machines to be powered, people are just building these cities on top of ancient ruins of old technology and just plugging their stuff into it and seeing what happens. And these same ancient ruins, they would find out decades after doing this, is where monsters come from. And so people are, you know, industry is going unchecked. Meanwhile, underneath the sort of boiling terror is happening. And I think, you know, there are also some strange and esoteric magics that are happening in the world, but really that strange mix of industry and the eldritch are really just like the heart of Crucible of Aether.
Those ancient ruins, they're not really dead. No. Because they were built, I assume, in similar ways. So they are, many parts of them or themselves are living, I don't want to say breathing, I don't know if that's a thing, but are living entities or collaborative entities, I guess, like entities surviving together. So these ruins, is dungeon crawling a thing then?
Dungeon crawling is a thing. However, I will mention that the way that combat exists in this world and in this system is that, so combat is very tooth and nail, it's very crunchy, and we wanted combat to be two things. One, and most importantly, combat is optional, right? I mentioned earlier that you should have infinite ways to tackle problems, one of which is violence. Not always, you know, you should always have different ways of doing it. You can make characters that aren't necessarily good at that kind of stuff. But combat, when you do decide to use violence, when you do decide to start fighting people, I want combat to feel weighty. I don't want you getting into a knife fight for you choosing to hurt something, to hurt an entity, for that to feel like a blasé choice, right? We're not just, oh, it's another combat, you know. So combat is very deadly. So there is dungeon crawling, and you can find yourself in these ruins, you can find yourself face to face with these terrors, and you can make characters or develop characters or advance characters to hunt these monsters successfully. But it is a truly terrifying and tooth and nail experience.
I saw a post from about a year ago where you were looking for an editor, and it said 320,000 words. That was a year ago. Is it still in that realm, or is it expanded or contracted? How big has it gotten?
So it is still a pretty hefty book. We're looking, when it's finally released, it's about 420 pages. But the reason for this is we want people to be able to buy one book, GMs, players, all of this, and they get the entire world. They get every one of these factions. It's not going to be piecemealed in a bunch of supplements. It is a game that is just ready for any option, any adventure. And it really is ready for any adventure. I mean, over the course of playtesting, we've had anything from like heist campaigns to pirate campaigns to campaigns of survival in snowy wildernesses, and it's all ready for that stuff. And this is all in places that have lore behind it, that have actions associated with it, and you can really just take any of these millions of pieces that are in this game and just make your own little story in this world.
And when I went to actually research a little bit, I found you're an indie creator, a small creator, creating their first product, 400 and something pages of product, which obviously a decade is what it took. So how big is your team? What have they done to help bring this to life other than just you?
Yeah.
And your illustrator?
Perfect. So I obviously, lead designer, but I am backed and incredibly supported by two other writers who are just equally doing this as a passion project. Mike McInerney and Ian Starr, just two unbelievable writers from various somewhat writing backgrounds that just fell in love with the world and have helped kind of bring it to life and all of that stuff. Then I also have an absolute godsend for this, which is a man named Tim Appleby, who is our layout person and does all of the book design and all of that. I mentioned Emily Megan, who has, who does a lot of the amazing art. We also have a secondary contract artist who does monster design, Allie Briggs, who has actually worked with some really big names like Critical Role, and has actually worked, on just a lot of other kind of higher name stuff, and we're very fortunate to get their monster design. And then finally, we you mentioned earlier, you did a call out for an editor. We do have an editor who Casey Crook, who is another person who is really into sort of crunchy games and very strange and esoteric worlds, and has done some amazing stuff. We've also hired some other people. We got a sensitivity writer to kind of run through some stuff, and we're actually still looking for more artists because it is a very big world, and I want people to see all of it.
Yeah, of course. So, safety tools.
Yeah.
Do you emphasize them in your game?
Yes. So, and I think everybody should emphasize this stuff in your game because, Crucible of Aether is a dark fantasy world, right? And there's a lot of very difficult subjects in there, right? It is a game that is in the throes of, religious zealots, of unchecked capitalism, of all of this stuff. And I want people to be able to explore this world, but I'm not just trying to be edgy and just put a bunch of scary things in there. So I want players to have a conversation, to know what kinds of things they can expect, what kinds of things they want to avoid, and to be able to engage in these very difficult and large subjects that can affect people in real life with the most, sensitivity, so that people can have the most fun at the table. 10
years has to come to a head at some point.
Yes.
You're coming to Kickstarter. You're on Kickstarter, gathering signatures gathering prospects. When do you think it'll be the launch will happen?
So, as you said, pre-launch on Kickstarter right now. We can be followed, all of that stuff. We are going to officially launch the Kickstarter in the first quarter of 2025. So we're hoping really early. We're hoping next month, but could be February.
Nice.
And after that, we plan on, if everything is successful, we plan on getting it out, end of the year, beginning of next year, as the official product.
Oh, wonderful. So, you'll be kickstarting with it already written, most of or all of the art already done.
Yes.
You'll really be waiting on final edits and production.
Yeah, we need just a couple additional pieces of art, which is really what the Kickstarter is about, and printing. Most of the money that we're getting from the Kickstarter is to take this big book and make a physical copy of it. Yeah.
You'll be kickstarting with it already written, most of or all of the art already done.
Yes.
You'll really be waiting on final edits and production.
Yeah, we need just a couple additional pieces of art, which is really what the Kickstarter is about, and printing. Most of the money that we're getting from the Kickstarter is to take this big book and make a physical copy of it. Yeah. But we are most likely going to go through Drive-Thru RPG. So I know that they're in the States. They
print wherever you are.
Yeah, they print wherever you need it to be.
Yeah, wonderful. I hate to ask, but what comes after this launches?
So something that after it launches, first thing we want to do is we want to expand with a series of one-shots. We have one fully printed one-shot right now, and we want to continue that story. But as it keeps going, I'd love to advance the world. You know, I'd love to add, you know, different places that we haven't been to yet and all of that stuff. So while it is a huge and complete game, it is a world that is still forever bigger than one book can ever handle. And I'd love to add new features and things like that.
Where can they go to find out about Crucible of Aether, about your Kickstarter, and follow you?
Yeah, so we are Crucible of Aether on Kickstarter, on Blue Sky, which is the #1 place to follow us. You can find us at Aether Crucible on Instagram, and if you just search Crucible of Aether on Kickstarter, which I highly recommend you do, you will immediately find us, and please follow us on there, because we want to get as many backers to make this big game a reality.
Right.